Hey guys, welcome to my channel. For today's video, I want to do something a little bit different. So I'm in a different setting today. I wanted to do a story time and talk to you about my twin pregnancy that I went through and also my birth story and kind of tell you all the good things, the bad things that happened, kind of all the details. I do have a lot of friends and family and also random people I meet that always ask how my experience was. So I figured I would just sit down and film this video for you guys, and it'll be nice to kind of take a look back on what I experienced 2.5 years ago. So yeah, if you guys are interested in hearing my twin pregnancy and my birth story, then go and keep watching. Alright, so we have our big amethyst here with us to give us some good energy and to help me not be so anxious so I can get through this. And I also have my nice cup of coffee. So I wrote down some notes just so I could remember everything and to go into as much detail as I can, because it's quite a story. So yeah, we'll go ahead and start from the very beginning. We'll start with my baby daddy. So his name is Michael, and we've been dating about 5.5 years. We are engaged, and we had the boys after we had been dating for 3 years. Yeah. So we were dating for 3 years. We were living together and we were just working all the time, and we had a lot of time for each other, and we kind of came to a point where we were ready to add something. You know, we had kind of talked about it, that if it happened, we'd be really happy, but we weren't necessarily trying to make it happen, but we weren't taking precautions. So that's kind of how that started. So how I found out was, it was about a month later after we had been talking about it. I was at work. I was working at Applebee's as a bartender at the time, and my coworker had brought in her newborn baby, and I was holding her, and I just had such an overwhelming feeling, and I just felt so much love and passion and warmth. It was crazy. And as soon as I gave her daughter back, I instantly, like in my mind, I was like, I'm pregnant. Like I knew right away. It was the strangest feeling, but I felt so confident. I was like, I know I am. So I texted Michael and I was like, hey, when I get home, I want to go and pick up a pregnancy test. And he was like, oh, okay. So it was probably, I got out of work probably 1 o'clock in the morning. So I went home, picked him up. We went to the Walmart neighborhood market and we got the clear blue pregnancy test. If I can find the picture of it, I'll put it up here. But we took the test and I didn't want to look at it. I was so afraid and anxious. Like I just didn't know how to feel. So he went and he picked it up and he was like, oh my God, you're pregnant. And I was like, no, like you're lying. I was doubting myself. I was like, I don't think I'm really pregnant. But sure enough, it said pregnant, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah, so that's kind of how I found out I was pregnant. So then we made an appointment with my regular doctor that I would go to, and just to get a confirmed pregnancy test from them before we started, the next step of going to an OBGYN and all that. So I went to my regular doctor and took a test. It was confirmed, and it was so funny how she said it. She came in and she was just like, so you're definitely pregnant. I don't know if you're happy about it or if you're not. Like she didn't know what the situation was, and it was funny. And we were like, yeah, we want it. And so she's like, oh, okay. And she was all excited, but she didn't know how to react at first. So that was really funny. So I made the appointment at Dr. Vishwanath's office, and I was so nervous. I just, you don't know what to expect. You're excited, but you're still like, what's the next step? So at my first appointment, they tried to do an ultrasound on my stomach, and at that point, I was probably only, I don't remember, probably like 6 to 7, maybe 8 weeks along. And she couldn't find anything, and she was like, don't freak out, don't worry. It doesn't mean there's not a baby in there. I can't see it yet. So we're going to schedule you an ultrasound appointment, and then, that way we'll be able to get the heartbeat and see the baby. So I mean, obviously it was a little concerning because we were like, why can't you find the heartbeats? We didn't know. And so it was a couple weeks later we went. I remember it was on a Monday morning, and me and Michael were really excited because obviously it's our first time we're going to get to see the baby. The ultrasound technician called us back, and I was in such a good mood. I was like, hey, how's your morning going? And she was just like, oh, it's fine. And I was like, oh, okay. We were on two totally different moods. And so we got in there, and she had to do the ultrasound vaginally because it was early along, and with those type of ultrasounds you can get a better picture from the inside rather than the outside since it's so small. So she instantly just put it up, and we couldn't see the screen at all, and she asked me, and she was like, did you know you're having twins? And I was like,
what?
Me and Michael looked at each other like, are you serious? Like, what? I mean, we had never talked about that. I'd never even thought that that would happen to me, and I was just so genuinely shocked. And the fact that she asked me like I knew, I was like, no, I have no idea. So now it makes sense. With the first ultrasound, we couldn't see the other one because there was two and they were blocking each other. So we got to see him for the first time. It's just crazy because it's two huge sacs and then like the tiny little babies. And I mean, we were just so excited, and I was really excited in that moment, but then I also had a moment where I was like terrified because I'm a really small, petite person, and I was afraid to even have one child. So to find out there was two, it was like, I'm gonna die. Like, I'm not gonna survive this. But I was trying to stay positive, and it's such a blessing. I was so excited, but I also, everybody else around me was like, oh my God, how are you gonna carry them? You're so small. So then, it puts in my head like, oh my God, am I gonna be able to do this? Overall, we were more excited, but I definitely had that scared side of me too, as anyone would. So when we told our family and our friends, it was awesome. I remember as soon as we got out, I called my dad, and I told him, and he was just like, no way. Like, he was like, I cannot believe that. Like, he was mind blown. We got home, and Michael's mom was living there, and so we showed her the picture, and she screamed. Like, she was so excited. She was jumping up and down. She was like, oh my God. And then we went straight over to my good friend Stephanie, and I went to go and show her the ultrasound. I hadn't said anything, and I just showed her, and she was like, wait a minute, 1, 2? She was like, what? And it was so much fun telling everybody and getting to experience that huge shock. So the twins that I carried are Di twins. So I'll give you a little bit of information on twins. So there's Momo twins, Mo-Di twins, and Di twins. The Momo twins share everything. They share the placenta, they share the same sac. And those are known to be kind of like the more dangerous type of twins just because they are connected completely. And then the Mo-Di twins is where they have the same placenta, and then they have two different sacs. So with Di twins, they have a separate sac and a separate placenta. So normally Di twins are fraternal twins because the female has to be able to carry 2 eggs in order for them to be separately in their own sacs and own placentas. In my case, they are actually identical twins. So I'll get into more of what the boys are and all that stuff later on in the video. So my doctor had told me early on that I should plan to deliver C-section because he did say my uterus was like turned inward or downward. So he said it would be really difficult to give birth to one, let alone two. And then also it's hard because if one's breech and the other one's face down, you don't want to give birth to a breech baby. It could be dangerous. It's done, but it's not recommended. So he told me just to prepare for a C-section because that's most likely what was going to happen. So that's mainly what I focused on. I did a little bit of research on I wanted to know what to expect, but I also didn't want to do too much to where I was overly thinking about it because it's scary. I've never had surgery before, so this was going to be something completely different for me. So I wanted to somewhat be prepared, but not have too much information to where I'm freaking out. So I'm glad I knew early on that I was going to because I had that time to mentally prepare for it, but it was still scary regardless if you're doing C-section or vaginal. It's both ways the baby's got to come out, and it's not. So my first trimester of my twin pregnancy was amazing. The only negative I had was I was so tired. I had never been so tired to where I wanted to just drop to the floor and fall asleep. Like I was just drained completely. But I only remember getting nauseous one time, and other than that, I was perfectly fine. I didn't have morning sickness. I didn't have anything crazy going on. No cramps, anything like that. I was like living my best life at my first trimester. I would say around 18 weeks is when I remember things kind of starting to go downhill a little bit. I mean, I was on such a high. Everything was, going so well, and I was like, this is going to be easy. And yeah, about 18 weeks, I started having a lot of really intense pains that I didn't feel was normal. So I had went to work, and I ended up leaving and going to the doctor because I was just in so much pain and it was like unbearable. So I went in and just kind of had a consultation with one of the nurse practitioners, and she was saying, that it's just that time that my body is starting to expand. The babies are getting a little bit bigger and it's starting to move around things inside my body, and based on the way they're positioned, they could be, digging in somewhere, and that's where the pain's coming from. So it pretty much from then on, when she told me that, I was like, this is gonna be really tough. Like, this is only 18 weeks and I still gotta go. They say 37 weeks for twins is considered full term. So I was just thinking, I'm only at 18 weeks and I'm already having this much pain. So that was kind of scary, but I had such amazing first trimester, so I'm really, really thankful for that. I thought for sure that I had at least one girl. I felt it from the beginning when I only thought it was one. I knew I had a girl.
All boys? They're looking for girls.
And I was wrong because I found out I was having two boys. I mean, now I'm really excited and I'm happy, but at the time I was kind of like, oh, I wish it was a boy and a girl because then I would be done. I'd get my boy, I'd get my girl, and we'd be set, but it didn't happen that way. But I'm glad it didn't because I love both of my babies the same. But about 16 weeks, I was in a wheelchair all the time. I was told at that time, about 18 weeks, to get ready for bed rest because it was coming. So I was like, dang, already? Like only 18 weeks into it. That was the hard part about my pregnancy. Was my second trimester, anytime I ate something, I would get so dizzy and just like feel like passing out. Like, that feeling when you're just so dizzy, disoriented, you're so hot, you just like, you're about to go out, like you're about to black out. So that would happen to me every day, like at least once a day. And it was really hard because no one understood, and I just felt like people thought I was faking it or something. But I mean, I would take 3 steps and I would just be blacking out, and I'd always have to sit down and everyone would just be staring at me and waiting, and I was so early along, I hardly had a tummy. So people were like, what are you doing? Like, you're only, this far along. But it was hard, anything I ate. And I didn't know if it was diabetes or something, or what was making me pass out, or if they were just taking up all my energy. I didn't know what it was. I'm not sure exactly when you take the glucose test, but that's to test for gestational diabetes. But the first one I took is just the 1 hour one, and you drink that concentrated, nasty, sugary soda tasting thing, and then you have to give blood an hour later, and it sees how quickly you can break down the sugar. So apparently for me, I failed it the first time miserably. I failed it by a lot. So then they scheduled me for the 2 hour one, and with that one you give your blood, and then you drink the drink, and then you give blood after each hour. So the first hour you give blood again, and then the second hour you give blood again. So it shows how much your body's breaking down that sugar. That one I failed again. And by that point, that was when I was passing out all the time, and I was so over it because I couldn't enjoy anything. Like, I couldn't do anything because I was just passing out. And so I told the doctor, like, can you just diagnose me with gestational diabetes so I can go to the nutritionist and figure out what I need to do so I'm not feeling like this all the time. And he said, no, we're going to take the 3 hour glucose test, which I was dreading because I hated taking them. I always passed out after, and it always would be a harder knockout because it was so sugary. So the 3 hour one was the worst I had experienced, because same thing. They take your blood, you drink the drink, take your blood after an hour, take your blood after 2 hours, take your blood after 3 hours, and then me and Michael went to go eat at Casa Corona after, and we were sitting there and I just knocked out. That one, I don't remember at all what happened. I just remember like falling on the table, and everyone was like, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with her? And at that point I looked a lot more pregnant, so everyone was all concerned. But it was scary, and it was frustrating because I just didn't want to have to go through it anymore. I hated feeling like I was just dying. Those tests that I was taking, they were so gradually over time, so by the time I even gave birth, like, we never even really did anything about it. So when I was 24 weeks, I went to do my 3D ultrasounds, and we got to have all our friends and family there, and so we could all see the boys, and that was so much fun, getting to be with everybody. We were planning the baby shower. My friend Stephanie was throwing it for me, so we were starting to do that. And I'm sorry, this was 23 weeks this was happening. And at 24 weeks is when everything like really switched for us. I mean, it was hard before, but then it got really, really tough. I was at 24 weeks. I took the fetal fibronectin test, and this was at one of my high-risk doctors. So let me kind of backtrack. I had Dr. Vish he was the doctor that was going to deliver the babies, but I also had an ultrasound place that I went to. So I had my high-risk doctor, which was Helm. My high-risk doctor was Dr. Helm. And so at the time I only had two doctors, my main doctor and then my high-risk doctor. My high-risk doctor I would see a lot more often just for ultrasounds and checkups, and they would do, the full anatomy scans and make sure everything looks good. So I went in for my 24-week checkup at Dr. Helm, which was the high-risk doctor, and they had me take a test. It was called the fetal fibronectin test, and I will never forget this. She gave me a little pamphlet, and it was talking about what fetal fibronectin is. And on the pamphlet, it even said it was like a 10 to 15% chance that you will be tested positive for this. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be easy. And I was like, what do you have to do? And all it was just a little swab down there, and the fetal fibronectin, it gives off a protein to show that you are in active labor. I was scared, I was like, I don't know what this is. And she's like, no, you're fine. Like, it's only 10 to 15% chance that you'll get this. So, just relax, don't freak out. And I'm like, okay. So she did it, and she said to call back at 3 o'clock that day to check on my results. So I was at home hanging out with Michael, and I was about to head over to Stephanie's house, and we were gonna do some baby shower planning. And I decided to wait until 3 to call for some reason. I was gonna just head over there, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wait until I call, and then I'm gonna go. So I called at 3 o'clock exactly. So I called, and I was like, hey, I'm just trying to check and see that test result. And she was like, oh, you tested positive. And I was like, oh, like, I couldn't believe she said that, just because I had it so set in my mind that it was going to be negative. And I was like, oh my God, and like, what does that mean? And she was like, oh, call your OBGYN and they'll tell you what to do next. And I was like freaking out, like, what does this mean? So as soon as I hung up the phone with that doctor about to call my other doctor, they were already calling me. So it was like such a quick thing. And she was like, yeah, so you need to go to the hospital right now. You're in preterm labor. And at that moment, I was so scared. Like, I was not ready. Like, I didn't want to leave the house. Like, Michael had to get me out of the house because I just wanted to, like, hide in a hole and say no. Like, I don't want to, like, nothing bad can be happening right now. We ended up going, and they checked the heartbeats. The nurses were so, like, confused at why I was there. And I told her, it was the fetal fibronectin. I tested positive, and everyone seemed so shocked because it was such a, like, it hardly happened, like, that early on at 24 weeks. So it was scary, because everyone was just shocked. And I was like, I don't know what any of this means. I know I'm in preterm labor, but does that mean I'm going to literally have him right now or what? So she checked to see if I was dilated, and I was, I think, like 2 centimeters or something like that. And so she's like, okay, we're going to have to admit you and try and stop your labor. And I hadn't done, like, hardly any research on any of this type of stuff because I didn't want to work myself up for something that wasn't going to happen, that I didn't know if it was going to happen. So I just tried to, just kind of go with the pregnancy as it went along and not try and, think too much into things. So once they confirmed that I was in active labor, they told me they were going to give me steroid shots. It was going to be 1 now and then 1 in 24 hours. And it was in your ass, which hurt really bad. It didn't feel good. And she was like, this is going to help the lungs develop quicker because they're only 24 weeks. So they're really, they're still not developed nearly enough to give birth. So the steroid shots were going to help them, grow faster in case something happens. They have a better chance. So she did that, and then they admitted me, and they told me they were going to put me on magnesium sulfate. And let me tell you, that was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. They just had a huge bag of this shit, and they were putting it in through my IV, and she told me I was going to feel like just really slow and just relaxed and not able to really talk much. Just really, like, she was like, you're not going to be able to do much. You're just going to be kind of like, sitting like a zombie and just not really feeling much. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just relax and just nap through all this, get through it. And it was not that at all. Instantly, after a couple seconds, I feel like it was going into me, my heart was slowing so much. I couldn't talk to anybody. I could hardly think to talk to anybody. And I couldn't move anything. And I begged her after having it for a couple hours. I begged her to take it off because I I could hardly breathe. Like, I felt like I was like panicking, but I wasn't even able to panic. Like, it was such a weird and shitty feeling. Like, and I couldn't sleep at all. And I know the steroid shots, they can, you know, make you feel awake and stuff. So I don't know if it was the mixture of the two, but I was wide awake, you know, didn't sleep for like 24 hours. And I was on this shitty thing to where I couldn't do anything. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get up. I couldn't, you know, just nothing. That sucked. I had some people come visit me, and it was hard to see them because I could see so clearly everything that was going on, but I couldn't talk and I couldn't react. I couldn't like make any faces. Like, it was really, really crazy. So, and after that, they kept me there. I ended up being there for 2 weeks. It felt like 2 weeks was like an entire year. I swear. I had never been in a hospital bed like that. Just so miserable and scared, and you know, I just felt so alone. It was crazy. And I mean, Michael, he had to work a lot. He was there as much as he possibly could. Anytime he wasn't at work, he was there. But it was just so weird being alone. And they would take me down every day to do some ultrasounds. They would do it vaginally so they could see everything. And, you know, they just kept doing that daily. And every day was like are they going to come today? Am I going to dilate more? Like, am I going to be in here until the babies get here? Like, it was just such a scary and weird experience. And after the 2 weeks, like, I didn't even know I was going home until that day. Like, that day, I guess my insurance with Medi-Cal, since I wasn't in active labor anymore because the magnesium like slowed it down, and I was just, you know, on strict bed rest. I didn't really shower very much. If I did, I had to like have, you know, help. You know, my insurance wasn't going to pay for it anymore. And I had one doctor saying like, you need to stay. We need to fight for you to be able to stay here longer because we don't want you to go into labor. It's way too early. The other one was like, no, you should go home, relax, rest, get some good sleep before you do go into actual labor again. And then I had a third one that was kind of like, you know, I'll go with either one. He didn't really have a strong opinion. So that was hard because I felt afraid to go home because I'd have, you know, them monitoring the babies all the time, have that extra help to eat, have that extra help to shower and do all that. So after we left the hospital, thankfully Michael was able to take time off work so he could take care of me. He literally was my nurse. Like, he brought me my breakfast, lunch, dinner, took me to the bathroom, helped me shower. I had a chair in the shower. I could only shower every couple days. We had a lot of fun, but we also were driving each other nuts because we literally had nothing to do. I couldn't go anywhere. You know, he was stuck here, and yeah, we were just kind of like at a pause in our life that we couldn't do anything. We were waiting. Every day was like, is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen now? And every week was like so exciting because we knew the boys are going to be more developed and more developed, you know, as the time progresses. So yeah, it's crazy talking about this so fast because when I was in it, it felt like years that I was pregnant. So we finally made it to 36 weeks and 4 days. And that night, so August 20th is when I went into labor. It was like that night. I want to say about by 6, 7, 8 o'clock, I was just feeling really crappy. I had like heartburn so bad. And so I had Michael pick me up some heartburn. I took it, and I remember that night we had like the best conversation. It was something that we needed to have before having the boys, you know, just talking about us and what we wanted and how things were going to go down, and, you know, just that reassurance that we needed for each other. And it was amazing. We went to Taco Bell. We went in the drive-thru at like midnight or something. And I just wasn't feeling good, but I also hadn't been feeling good for so long because, you know, I was just so big and just in bed all the time. So my body constantly was aching. So I felt bad, but I was used to it at that point. And we got home and it just progressively like got really, really bad. And I was like, okay, I think it's time to go to the hospital. It started, you know, you felt your body really tightening up a lot, and it was just like an undescribable type of feeling. So it was probably about 1 in the morning. Yeah, I would say it was about 1 in the morning when we headed over there. We went in the ER and I got checked in. They took me back to labor and delivery, and she said, you know, you're definitely in labor. I was like 4 or 5 centimeters by that point, and I remember the girl saying, like, looks like it's gonna be a birthday today. And I was so relieved, just because you're, you know, this whole time period you're just waiting for it to happen. You don't know when it's gonna happen and how it's gonna happen. So I just felt so grateful to finally be at the point to where it was happening. They weren't gonna try and stop it. Like, it was go time. So labor sucks ass, I won't lie. It's doable because, you know, women do it, you know, time and time again. Women have multiple babies, so it can't be that bad to where you don't want to have more. But it's probably the worst pain you'll feel in your lifetime, but it's doable. I'll just say that. It's doable. It sucks, but yeah, you gotta have that pain and that hurt and all that before you get the baby, because it just makes it that much better and that much more exciting, because you have to work so hard to get there. So I was in labor and they gave me something to help relax me a little bit. I have no idea what it was. At that point, I didn't even care because I couldn't think about anything. I couldn't pick up my phone. I was irritated at anybody that was talking to me. Like, I just didn't want anything to do with anybody. I just wanted to be alone. So they contacted my doctor, and my doctor said that he was going to be there at 8 o'clock that morning. So it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were going to wait until he got there at 8 o'clock to do the C-section. So labor sucked. I had to pee so much because they had me on all these different fluids. I did not expect what was about to happen at all, as no one does. But I don't want to scare anybody, but this was the most painful and scariest moment of my life. You know, they took me in the OR, and the OR is extremely cold, like really, really cold. And Michael, they make him wait outside while they give me my spinal tap. So I went in there, you know, it was just me, the anesthesiologist, and then a couple nurses, you know, getting things prepared. And so the first thing was doing the spinal tap, and oh my god. So, let me backtrack. When I went in, the weeks before, I had been feeling really, really weird. My blood pressure was like extremely high. I told him I didn't feel right, but I don't know. I don't want to talk about the doctors in the office and all that, but I just felt not right, and I feel like I should have gone to the hospital sooner anyways, because I knew my blood pressure was so high and I just didn't feel normal. I felt like they were really stressed. I had to do non-stress tests, and they were stressed. You could tell that they didn't have any room anymore, and all 3 of us were just not doing good. Like, I just didn't feel right. So when I had went in, my blood pressure was like extremely high. So I had preeclampsia, and I had been taking baby aspirin daily ever since I went to see my high-risk doctor for the first time. He had me take the baby aspirin every day, and it helps thin your blood out to prevent preeclampsia. But I did, get preeclampsia, which sucked, and that's how a lot of mothers unfortunately die, because you know your blood pressure is so high and you're just not really doing that great. But the reason for me saying all that was my anesthesiologist said since I had preeclampsia, my back was really swollen, so it was hard to get to where he needed to, you know, in my spine canal. Like, it was hard to get there because it was so swollen. And I also had my huge belly, and I was begging them to let me pee before, but they were like, no, we're going to put a catheter in and, you know, you'll be fine. But since I had to pee so bad, you're supposed to, you know, you're supposed to hold yourself and, you know, arch your back like that so they can get in. So they can get in really good in the area that they need to. So I was doing that, and I will never forget that moment, because I was just in my mind thinking, like, if this is time, like, you've been waiting for this moment this whole time, it's here, it's gonna suck so bad, but you just have to get through it, and once it's done, it'll be over with, and it'll just be a memory you can forget about, because I really don't like thinking about it, because it was really traumatic. He had to poke my spine 6 times because I was so swollen, so he couldn't get my spinal canal, you know, wherever he had to get it at. And he felt so bad. He was like, I've never had to poke someone this many times. Like, I'm really sorry. It's just, you're really swollen. I can't get to it. So finally he did, and oh my God, thank God, because that was, ugh. It hurts. It hurts just thinking about it. So then after that, they let Michael in. Thank God. I was like, I need you. So the spinal tap is meant to make your whole lower half of your body, you just can't feel anything at all. Like, nothing. And I couldn't feel, like, when I tell you I couldn't feel anything, I couldn't feel a damn thing. I couldn't even think about wiggling my toe. Like, I just couldn't even think about it. It's the craziest feeling ever. And I mean, it made me happy because I knew I wasn't gonna feel him cutting inside me and pulling babies out, but it was like the craziest feeling to not feel anything. And what I wasn't prepared for, and anybody that's watching this that is pregnant or plans to get pregnant, whatever, a lot of people don't tell you that when you're in labor, you get the crazy shakes. Like, you just start, like, it feels like you're having a seizure. You're just shaking so much, and it's just, I mean, I guess it's just your hormones and everything going crazy because you're giving birth. But I was, like, freaking out because I was just, you know, like, moving, and I'm like, am I having a seizure? Like, what's happening? And the anesthesiologist was like, don't worry, I got you. You know, he gave me something, and it helped calm me down, but I was not expecting that. I was like, what is going on right now? Michael was like, are you feeling okay? So let me tell you about this operating room. Okay, 1, it's freezing cold. 2, it was really hard to see all the tools that they were going to be using on me right next to me. That was traumatizing, and it's so scary. And there was so many people in there. I had the anesthesiologist, I had Michael next to me. You're laying down, you have like a tarp over you so you can't see what's going on. I ended up having 2 doctors, my Dr. Vishwanath, and then he had this other doctor come to assist him since it was 2. And then there was about 4 nurses that were for me, you know, to, you know, catch all the blood and, you know, hand the doctors everything and take stuff away, you know, do all that stuff. And then the boys each had 3 nurses for themselves. So when they gave birth, they had 3 people that were going to help them and a separate 3 people to help the other. So there was a lot going on. It was crazy because it's so bright in there. It's so cold. There were so many people, and they were just all acting so normal. Like, this was everyday life for them, which it is. And to me, I'm just like so vulnerable and helpless on the table with not being able to feel past my chest down, like I couldn't feel anything. And I just, I could just feel my body like moving, like it just felt like it was just being kind of tossed around. And the doctors were just sitting there talking, having a conversation in front of me. Like it was just so bizarre. And Michael watched Lucas come out. Lucas came out first. And crazy thing, they were born August 21st, 2017, which was the total solar lunar eclipse that we had in 2017. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was like a huge deal. And it's something that you only see every 1,000 years or something. And I had the boys during the eclipse when it was happening here in Fresno. And it was insane to think about and so special and crazy. But Lucas was born at 9:24. They showed me him, after they pulled him out, they kind of just showed me what it looked like. I didn't get to, hold him or anything because they were still really small, really premature, and they needed help. So they took him. I heard him cry, thank God. That's like the scary part, is like waiting for your kid to cry because you know that they're okay, they're alive. And then all of a sudden after that, the doctors stopped talking to each other, like they got really serious, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And it took them 3 minutes. I don't know what they were, well, they told me after what they were doing, but 3 minutes. So Lana was born at 9:27, and they actually took him straight to the NICU. I didn't hear him cry, which was terrifying. I had no idea what was going on. So as soon as Lana was born, they took him straight back. I didn't get to see him, unfortunately. And Michael left me too to go with the boys, which I understand, but it was like such a crazy feeling. I just gave birth to 2 kids. My man's gone. They're sewing me back up, and I didn't even know how to feel. Like I was so awake, and that's what's so crazy, is because when you give birth vaginally, you're so exhausted because you just are pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing your heart out. It's a lot more physical, but with the C-section, it's like I felt so awake and so like just crazy, and I couldn't relax at all. I just couldn't even like wrap around my head what just happened. So they rolled me back to, like the little recovery area. And the nurse came, and she told me that they were going to have to push on my stomach I think in the beginning it was every 15 minutes. And let me tell you that I would cry and beg for them to not. I'm like, please, I won't tell anybody that you didn't do it. Like, please don't do it. Because, you're so sore. You literally just got cut open, and they just sewed you back up. And then your kids are gone. They just sewed you back up. And they just roll, just to make sure you don't get any blood clots. And I had so many clots coming out. It was disgusting. Sorry, it was probably way too much TMI. But, yeah, they had to roll just to get all the blood to not clot. And that hurt so bad. Oh, my God. I unfortunately didn't get to see the boys until they were probably about somewhere between 24 to 48 hours after they were born, because they did get sent to the NICU, and they both were having trouble with breathing. That was like my biggest fear, was that everyone else was going to get to meet the boys before I did, and that's exactly what happened. Michael got to take everybody back to see the boys in the NICU one at a time. And since I had preeclampsia and I had eclampsia after I gave birth, I still had really high blood pressure. My liver wasn't doing good. They just said I was like not in good shape, so they gave me magnesium sulfate again. Yay. And this time, actually, as crazy as it sounds, it was worse. They were afraid that I was going to have a seizure or something because my blood pressure was so high. So I had to stay in bed and have the magnesium for 24 hours. And this time, I mean, it was bad just like the other one was, but it got to the point where I thought I was going to stop breathing and die. Like Michael had went to the NICU to visit the boys during the nighttime. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had been sleeping and I woke up and I couldn't even find or press like the nurse's button because I thought I was gonna die. Like I couldn't breathe. My body just, I literally couldn't move my hand to find the buzzer to get the nurse. So finally I was able to press the button and get the nurse, and I couldn't even talk. I couldn't even tell her. She got the bed and lifted me up so that I could try and speak, but I couldn't. And I just, showed her the IV, and I was like, the magnesium, like, I can't, like, I'm dying. Like, I literally felt like I was dying. And she was like, oh, we can't stop it. Like, we have to make sure you don't have a seizure. But she's like, let me talk to the doctor and we'll see what we can do. And I'm telling you, I was like praying and hoping that they would just take me off of it because I couldn't. So she said that they were going to order labs and see how much magnesium is in my body to see if they would take me off of it. So the lady came in and took my blood, and she like rushed back in there after, like 20 minutes or something, and she took me off immediately, and she said there's, more than enough in my system, like I don't need any more. And I had never wanted to hug somebody so much in my life. Like I was just like, thank you so much. And honestly, instantly after the IV stopped, I already started feeling better. I was just so scared and so overwhelmed, and I just wanted to see the babies. I wanted Michael. I wanted all that, pain and everything to be over with, because the healing process of the C-section is a whole nother story. But I finally got to see the boys. So they wheelchaired me up to the NICU, and I just remember that moment so much, that me and Michael was like our first time that we got to go and like finally see our babies together and just, get to hold them and love them and bond with them. And so we got in the NICU, and we didn't get to hold Landon that night. He had needles like in his head. Like it was so hard to see him so, wired up, and all these needles and like all these bruises, and like, they had a really rough beginning. We got to hold little Lucas, and I'm telling you, as soon as I got him in my arms, like all the pain, everything I went through was like out of my mind. Like none of that even mattered anymore, because it was all for this precious little human, and I'm not gonna cry. But yeah, it was just an amazing feeling, and that is why women give birth to multiple kids, because of that feeling right there. Like all the pain you went through is nothing compared to the love that you get to feel when you have your baby. And obviously we visited Landon and gave him some love, and the next day, I got to come back and I got to see him more throughout the day, but they never got to come up to me. I always had to kind of go visit them. So I ended up staying in the hospital for 4 days, and they released me after that. So yeah, we got to come home, and we had 2 nights without the boys. Like we would just go and visit them and come back. And after 6 days in the NICU, only 6 days thankfully, they were ready to come home. We had to do a little car seat test to make sure that their levels of everything stayed the same sitting in a car seat for, I think it was 30 minutes they had to sit in the car seat, and they passed the test. So we finally got to take our little guys home, and I'll never forget that feeling of like, I was like, I've never changed a diaper before. I don't even know like we have these two humans, like, what do we do? Like, what do we do? Me and Michael, like, when we got in the car, we just looked at each other and we were like, oh my God, we have like two humans in the back of our car right now. Like, what? So he was driving so slow and so like cautious, and like we both just, everything was so brand new. We had never had kids in the car. We had never anything. I'll put the video of like when we first got home and we like put him on the bed, and we would just like, we're like, what now? Like, what next? Like, what is going on? All in all, even though I went through a lot of pain, I would do it all over again for these guys. They are happy, healthy boys. They're 2.5 years old now. They are die-die twins, and we just found out that they are identical, which is only 30% of die-die twins are identical. So it's pretty, not rare, but it's not as normal. So what happened was the early embryo had split into two within the first 3 days. So since they split within the first 3 days, they developed in their own separate sac and separate placentas. Normally die-die twins are fraternal, where the woman can genetically carry 2 eggs. It runs in your genes. And when you carry the 2 eggs, you get separate sacs and separate placentas. With my situation, it was 1 sperm that the embryo split into 2, like very early on, the first 3 days. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. They're identical. It just happened. There's no explanation for it. It just happened. So that was awesome. Oh, I didn't say how much. The boys weighed, Lucas was 5 pounds, 12 ounces, and Landon was 5 pounds, 15 ounces. So they were both almost 6 pounds each. I'll put in a picture of the last picture I took being pregnant, which was still like 1 or 2 weeks before I gave birth. So I got pretty big. So I don't know if I said, but they're Lucas and Landon. They were born August 21st at 2017 at 9:24 and 9:27 a.m. Yeah, they were happy, healthy. After we got them home from the NICU, they didn't have any problems. They were perfectly fine, thankfully. So all in all, everything worked out exactly how it should. Any bad thing that happened and all the pain I went through, it was so worth it in the end. I would, like I said before, do it all over again for these guys. Like, I'm so thankful and lucky to have them here with me. And also, if you are pregnant with twins and you found this video that way, I hope this story doesn't scare you. I don't want to scare anybody. Everyone has their own birth story, and every pregnancy is completely different. So I don't want people to think that it was so horrible and it's going to happen that way for you. There's also so many people that have amazing pregnancies, amazing birth stories. Everyone has pain in it. It just comes with childbirth, but what you get out of it is so much bigger and so much better than that pain that you get that's just temporary, you know? So yeah. As of right now, we are done having kids. I don't see us having any, at least right now. Who knows what the future holds, but for now, we're content with 2. They're in their terrible 2s right now. All right, you guys, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Down below, I would love to hear some of your birth stories, or if anything similar happened to you or anything like that. I'd love to hear your stories down below. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye. So I just feel like I need to have a post-pregnancy dance, just kind of reliving it. I feel like I just need to like dance it off. Like, I did that shit. I did it.